It is 5 o'clock, and I call to order the meeting of the City Council of the City of Victorville. And the City Council sitting is the Library Board of Trustees, Southern California Logistics Rail Authority, Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, successor agency to the Victorville Redevelopment Agency, the Victorville Joint Powers Financing Authority, the Victorville Water District, and the Victorville Housing Trust, and also the opening of the special closed session meeting. May we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Kennedy?
Here.
Councilmember McEachron?
Here.
Councilmember Negretti?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cox?
Here.
Mayor Garcia?
Here. This is the time when we have public comments, but I don't see anyone in the audience that needs to address the council. So I will call for the declaration of closed session by our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor Garcia. We have 4 closed session items this evening. One is for the Airport Authority. It's existing litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9D1. It's the SEC versus City of Victorville case number, and specifics about the case set forth on the agenda. We then have 3 City Council items. One is also related to the same litigation under Government Code 54956.9D1, the SEC litigation. The next City Council item is a anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9D2. 1 potential case is involved. And then lastly, we have, as part of the special agenda, a conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation under Government Code 54956.9D4. And the name of the case is Under Seal versus Under Seal. That is a whistleblower type piece of litigation. To the extent there's reportable action, we will provide a report either at the conclusion of the closed session or at the commencement of the 6 o'clock meeting.
Thank you. We will recess to closed session, and regular session convenes at 6 p.m. Council sitting as the Library Board of Trustees, Southern California Logistics Rail Authority, Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, successor agency to the Victorville Redevelopment Agency, the Victorville Joint Powers Financing Authority, the Victorville Water District, and the Victorville Housing Trust. May we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Kennedy?
Here.
Councilmember McEachron?
Here.
Councilmember Negretti?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cox?
Here.
Mayor Garcia?
Here. May we have the closed session announcements by City Attorney?
Thank you, Mayor Garcia. We had 4 closed session items this evening. One for the Airport Authority, listed as Agenda Item A, pursuant to its existing litigation, pursuant to Government Code 54956.9D1. The case name and numbers that are set forth on the agenda. We have a sister item to that as Item B on the City Council agenda, also existing litigation, the same litigation. Then had anticipated litigation for the City Council for Government Code 54956.9D2. There's no reportable action with respect to that item. And the last item was pursuant to the special meeting notice, which was conference with legal counsel anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9D4. That case is Under Seal versus Under Seal, and with respect to that, the council unanimously voted to intervene in that litigation, so long as there is no cost to the city to do so. With respect to the other 3 items, there is no reportable action.
Thank you. We will now have the invocation, and it will be delivered by Pastor L. Zorn of Victory Christian Center. And following, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance that will be led by Police Chief Sam Lucia. Please stand.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Let us pray. Father God, we thank you for this time tonight. We thank you for these leaders that we have here, and we pray for our city of Victorville. Father, we declare that they have wisdom tonight and to decide in the matters of which are at hand, and that they seek you in all that they do. We thank you and just thank you for their safety and all that they do for our city. In Jesus' name, amen.
We have two presentations this evening. The first one will be introduction of Battalion Chief Tim Porter by Fire Chief Dan Muncy. And secondly, we will have a presentation to the City Council from Dreamers, Visionaries, and Leaders Project.
Mayor Garcia, members of the council, city staff, members of the audience, I would like to introduce to you Tim Porter. Now, I once read an article several years ago, and it said we're not hiring farm boys anymore. And it had to do with the generations. Nowadays, the new firemen we hire, they don't even change the oil in their cars. They don't know how to change the brakes. But that didn't happen in 1991. Fire Chief Becker at that time, he hired a cowboy. And I want to introduce Tim to you. Tim started as a paid-call fireman here in the city of Victorville in 1988. In 1991, he was hired full-time as a firefighter. He met his beautiful wife, Paige, and they bought their first house and only house in the city of Victorville between Green Tree and Nisqually Road. Tim has 3 children, one of us which is with us here today, Erica, you can wait, who's going to school to be a vet tech, Andrew, who served in the Army both in Iraq and Afghanistan, and Cody, who is in the Marine Corps. When I heard Tim was going to test for battalion chief, I knew who I wanted to come out number 1 on the test. I met with Tim, I worked a little bit with him, but I made sure I didn't participate in the process because I didn't want to influence it. And when they told me that I was getting Tim Porter, I couldn't have been a happier man. This guy has local knowledge, he has a strong desire to be a servant to the people that we serve, and just a wonderful individual. Thank you very much. Tim, do you have any words to say?
I'd like to say that it's an honor to be back in the city. As Chief Muncy said, I started my career here back in a long time ago, '98. And I left for a few months once we transitioned over to County Fire, and I'm back now, looking forward to serving the citizens and the people of the community. Thank you.
Tim will be assigned to the Victorville Division, be assigned to Station 311 on 24-hour shifts. And during his battalion, which he covers, if there's any major incidents involving more than 2 fire engines, Tim goes on scene and coordinates, along with all the administrative duties that's involved with that position. Thank you.
Welcome. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you and welcome. May we have our city clerk present the agenda to the council and any revisions to the agenda?
I believe that there is one other presentation, Mayor Garcia.
Oh, forgive me, you're right. Yes, we do have the Dreamers, Visionaries, and Leaders Project.
Good evening, and I think we have a video that's going to play, a little short video that's going to play for you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the High Desert.
It's my honor to join you today in the celebration.
The acceptance of this dedication was extremely humbling to me.
To talk about an inspiration to these young people that need guidance.
Ron Foy, please give him another round of applause. Don Lewis. Now, Madam Gibson, if you would please join us.
Willie asks that I make his announcement short and to the point.
We are proud to honor Mr. Gus Franklin Jr.
I'm here to present the awards for today's honorees.
This award is presented to Charles Bibbs in recognition of your extraordinary contributions to the Black experience. Ms. Kim Fields with the 2015 DBL Icon Award. I want to thank you all for coming and joining us in celebrating the Dreamers, Visionaries, and Leaders.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 7th Annual Dreamers, Visionaries, and Leaders Tribute Program.
First of all, I want to say thank you for this opportunity to present our appreciation to the mayor and to the city council for your support of DVL. I'm Regina Weatherspoon Bell, and I'm the founder of Dreamers, Visionaries, and Leaders. Since 2009, we have been celebrating multicultural contributions to our American history, and we've been doing that through celebrating Black History Month and Hispanic Heritage Month as well. For the past 2 years, the City of Victorville has supported us by showing our Know Your History DVD and making that available to the public for the month of February so that they can come in, and it's a 12-minute video that has a lot of historical facts. It's narrated by local citizens who we honor for their professional accomplishments as well as their community service. To date, we have recognized and honored 144 citizens in the high desert. Tonight we came before you. We brought packets for you that kind of capture all of the things we were able to accomplish for the month of February this year. But tonight we came to say thank you for your continued support. We hope to further engage the City of Victorville. I want to also say a special thank you to Councilmember McAkron for showing up at our tribute, which is what you saw in the video. That is our tribute program. And we really appreciate you being there, making those special presentations to the Lifetime Achievement honorees. But I also wanted to introduce some people to you who helped to make this possible, because this is not a small feat that we do. We have since grown since 2009 to not only doing community activities and events, which are made free to the community, but we also have developed a scholarship program. Last year was our first year of funding our scholarship program. Our intent was to fund 3 $500 scholarships. We wound up funding 6 $500 scholarships, and this year I'm happy to say we will be funding 10 $500 scholarships. So we are growing. We are really committed to building legacies and to helping our youth achieve their highest goals through education. These things are not accomplished by a single person. I've been blessed with a wonderful team, and tonight all of that work that you saw, those wonderful clips that you saw, have been made possible by the people who stand behind me, and I just want to introduce them to you. I have Maggie V., who stands as my right and left hand. I have Jennifer Bormatino, who is part of our team. I also have Yvonne Hernandez. Yvonne serves as the photographer. I also have Ben Johnston, who also serves as our official photographer. But I'm really proud of, and I've got a young man who's sitting in the back, but Clorinda, will you come up front, please? This is Clorinda. She is one of our interns. She has been with us since you were, what, about 11? Mm-hmm. About 11 years old. My son, who's a little shy, Grayson Bell, will you stand? Grayson is also an intern with us, and he has been an intern, of course, as long as Mom has been involved. And he's a third-year college student. He attends the Cal Baptist University. So this evening I came to say thank you on behalf of my team and myself. We have a special memento for you, and I'm going to read it. This is presented to the City of Victorville. We appreciate and value your partnership. Dreamers, Visionaries, and Leaders Project, February 2015. We're honoring multicultural contributions to our American history. Again, we thank you for another year of your support, and we look forward to an ongoing collaborative partnership. Thank you. Is it possible for us to get a photo with all of you?
Yes.
Great.
Doug, is that video on our city website?
I couldn't tell you that. If it's not, it will be soon.
If it's not, it should be. That was beautiful work.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And the gentleman who does that, Mike McKernan, is not here this evening, but he's an outstanding contribution to our team. So if you can, I'd love to have you guys come down and we'll take a photo.
As you head down, let me let you know that the 12-minute video that Regina talked about is played on the TV screens near our customer service area throughout the month of February, so that people, as they're waiting in line, can get a lot of education.
Yes, thank you.
for a concert.
Okay, I think we're back on track here. City Clerk, will you present the agenda to the council and revisions to the agenda, please?
Yes, Mayor Garcia. The City Council of the City of Victorville welcomes the public's participation in tonight's meeting. Persons who wish to address the council on a specific item or any item that does not appear on the agenda are requested to complete one of the white speaker cards located in the council chambers lobby and give it to the city clerk prior to the meeting. The mayor will call upon each individual who has submitted a speaker card. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.3, state law prohibits the council from addressing any issue not previously included on the agenda. The council may receive testimony and set the matter to a subsequent meeting. Comments are to be limited to 3 minutes per speaker or less as deemed necessary by the mayor. Communications are to be addressed directly to the city council. Individual comments to staff or members of the audience are not permitted. Any individual or group who engages in disruptive conduct during the meeting will be removed from the chambers by order of the mayor. Thank you for your cooperation. All documents to be considered for approval at this meeting are before the council. Following are the revisions that have been submitted for tonight's agenda. The first item is the request by the city attorney to remove consent calendar item C7. There is a revision to agenda item number D4, the second page of the staff report, which was inadvertently omitted from the agenda that was posted, is on the dais and available for public review. On item number D7, there are several emails that have been received in the city clerk's office regarding the renewal of the Redflex contract. And those items have been available on the dais and for public review, and those are all the revisions I have, Mayor Garcia.
Thank you. We have no appeal hearings this evening, so we move on to public hearings. And item B1, general plan amendment and zone change, case number PLN 14-00026. I open the public hearing. I don't see anyone that wants to come up, or is there someone that wants to come up and speak? Seeing none, I close the public hearing. Do we have any council members that want to speak or comment? I don't see anybody that wants to say anything at this time. Therefore, we move on to
To require an action at this time?
Pardon me?
To require an action of the council?
Yes, the action would be on resolution 15-005 and then the ordinance, the accompanying ordinance.
Move approval.
Second.
Does the movement go with waiver of further reading of the ordinance?
Was understood in my second.
Motion by Councilmember Kennedy, second by Mayor Pro Tem Cox. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries unanimously. I will read the title of the
Yes,
ordinance.
please.
Mayor Garcia. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Victorville approving a zone change to reclassify property from CA Administrative Professional Office to C2 General Commercial with an environmental exemption located at 14771 7th Street.
For the introduction and first
This
reading?
would be to introduce and waive further reading of ordinance number 2332.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Cox, second by Mr. McEachran. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries unanimously.
And now we have our consent calendar.
Move for approval. We need to
There's an
remove
item to be removed from the consent calendar, as I recall.
Yes, item C7, so the approval would be with that exception.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McEachran, second by Mr. Kennedy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries unanimously.
Now we have written communications. Item D1, amendment to agreement and additional agreement between City of Victorville and Mojave Desert Air Quality Management District. Recommendation is that the City Council approve first amendment to a previously approved grant agreement with the Mojave Desert and Air Quality Management District, MDAQMD, for the construction of a CNG fuel station, allocating a funding of $269,308.94 to a parcel of land near Nisqually Road and Hesperia Road, and approved grant agreement for the same CNG fuel station with MDAQMD in the amount of $320,000.
Question to the city attorney. I sat on the MDAQMD as a board member. Do I abstain?
No, this would not affect, you don't get compensation for that. For your position on that board, so it wouldn't affect you.
No, okay.
I'll move for approval. Second.
Motion by Mr. McEachran, second by Mr. Kennedy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I will abstain from the voting.
Abstention by Mr. Cox noted. Motion carries.
Now we have item D2, Water District Warehouse Blackwell Project. Recommendation is that the Victorville Water District Board of Directors award a contract to Rowton Construction in the amount of $304,837 for the Water District Warehouse Blackwell Project.
Move for approval.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Cox, second by Mr. Kennedy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries.
Item D3, emergency repair of sewer line. Recommendation that the City Council ratify payment to Apple Valley Construction, Inc. in the amount of $41,791.24 for the emergency repair of a sewer line near Hangar 747.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McEachran, second by Mr. Negrete. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries unanimously.
Item D4, amendment to agreement Butsco Utility Design, Inc. Recommendation that the City Council approve amendment number 6 to the General Services Provider Standard Agreement with Butsco Utility Design, Inc. to authorize an additional one-year term for fiscal year 2014-2015 and incorporate the automatic successive one-year renewals thereafter under the same terms and conditions until either party terminates pursuant to Section 21 of the agreement.
So move. Second.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, second by Mr. McEachran. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries unanimously.
Item D5, waste tire enforcement grant application.
Move approval of Resolution 15-009.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Cox, second by Mr. McEachran. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries unanimously.
D6, traffic signal coordination plans for Bear Valley Road, Nisqually Road, and La Mesa Road. That the City Council approve a professional services agreement to Albert Groover and Associates for preparing traffic signal timing and coordination plans for Bear Valley Road, Nisqually Road, and La Mesa Road in the amount not to exceed $87,990.
Madam Mayor, I have a question of staff.
Yeah, so do I.
Go ahead. Well, the question I have of staff, this timing, my understanding in the past is that the yellow light or the left turn lanes is totally dependent upon the posted speed limits unless there's dangerous conditions that allow the traffic adequate time to get through. Is this what they're checking? Because we have had complaints. Another matter that on red light cameras that we have set them too low. And we've asked the question before, can we arbitrarily set them, or are they professionally set in accordance to some standards? I would ask for an explanation from the city engineer.
There is a minimum standard. It's in a Caltrans manual. A minimum yellow light alignment is based on the posted speed, and all of our signals in the city meet at least that minimum standard. There are a few where we've increased the yellow time if there's a need for that, but this study really goes beyond that. It's a coordination study for these roads. But to answer your question, yes, all of our signals meet the minimum yellow time. We've verified that.
Brian, my biggest concern, and I brought this to your attention, to Sean's attention as well, emergency vehicles obviously have to use Bear Valley Road. And it tends to occur that when that happens, it throws the signals off between Mariposa and Amargosa, specifically at the lights on the bridge on Bear Valley Road. And what I've noticed is that you might get a green light going westbound on Bear Valley Road at Mariposa, but the light there on the bridge stuck. And what you all have told me is that's controlled by Caltrans. Is this going to solve that problem? Because I don't know why we'd be spending this money if it's not going to solve that problem.
This is simply a timing and coordination plan, but I'm planning on budgeting next year to make a change at the Caltrans signals similar to what we have at the Nisqually interchange. What we did at the Nisqually interchange is we put a different kind of controller in the Caltrans signals that's compatible with our controllers, and we have communication between our controllers and their controllers. What that means is they're all on the same timing plan and they're on the same clock. We have the same timing plan at Bear Valley Road, but they don't communicate. The Caltrans signals don't communicate with our signals. And I'm budgeting for next year to solve that problem. So we could get that implemented in the next fiscal year. Whenever there is a preemption by an emergency vehicle, it will upset the timing. It may take a few cycles for it to get back to be synchronized again, but this would solve the problem.
Okay, and I think from my perspective, I doubt that there's a council member up here that would have a problem with this. Doug, can't we get this sooner? I mean, why are we having to wait to budget for something like this when I don't know of any council member up here that would not have expected this prior to now. We should have already had this in place. Why is it that it's okay over on La Mesa and Nisqually, but all of a sudden on Bear Valley Road, which should have seen relief, but by the way, when I drive up and down it at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's as worse, if not, or it's as bad as it was back before La Mesa and Nisqually interchange opened. We shouldn't be experiencing this. If this is something that the city needs and it needs to be budgeted, the council needs to approve an appropriation, we ought to be doing that right now instead of waiting until next fiscal year.
Yeah, we can certainly step that up. There's no problem in doing that. If your question was about that, if it's about this timing item on the agenda right now, there's a different answer. But
well, that's not this issue, but
right.
beg the question. So I just want to know, can we get this done sooner than you're requesting it as a part of the next fiscal year budget?
That would probably accelerate it by a few months, but we're still going to have to get approval by Caltrans. And actually, we've been working on this for a few years, and we're just to the point now where we're ready to sign an agreement with them to allow them to place our timing plan and our communication, if you will, in their controllers. So we're just at the cusp of that now, but it would probably accelerate it by about 3 months.
If I, just as a follow-up, if we can bring that back so we can do that, if the council so desires. Last thing, I would like to see the council have the opportunity to discuss once again. I know I've had this conversation with Sean as well. I don't know how many years ago it was where we had a joint meeting with the Hesperia City Council about moving the off-ramp on the Hesperia side up west on Bear Valley Road up onto the bridge, and the on-ramp the same direction in order to facilitate traffic flow. You had a 5-0 council here. I think it was 3-2 against with Hesperia. It's my belief Hesperia has changed their mind, or at least would like to reconsider that. Is there any opportunity for us to reconsider or revisit that issue? And is there money from Caltrans to be able to study that and or design it?
We certainly could reconsider it. I don't know if Caltrans funding is available now. Apparently back at that time there was some commitment from Caltrans to provide some funding toward that project, but we'd have to contact them and see if any money has been programmed for that.
I'd like to actually at least have us agendize that, possibly bring it back for a joint council meeting. Because I think it's worthy of discussion, even if the money from Caltrans isn't there. The idea had merit. It's just that you couldn't get two councils to agree upon it. I think today might be a different scenario.
And Councilmember McEachran, what I recall was the moving of the off-ramp, or on-ramp actually in this case, was pretty well universally thought to be a good idea. The controversy was in the concept of actually shutting down the left turn at Mariposa, I guess it would be, in the freeway. And that's where the issues came in. But I think the engineering staff probably proposed moving that on-ramp more than 20 years ago at this point. It's sort of always been out there as a future potential solution to some of the traffic issues.
Right, and if I recall at that meeting, the issue with closing off left turn lanes coming westbound or eastbound was somewhat tied to this.
It was.
And it kind of, in essence, tied our hands because you either had to vote for it or vote against it. I don't necessarily think that from a policy decision that either council has to make that call. We can make the call to make the change on where the off-ramp and on-ramp goes.
Bring that back for a discussion to try to do some planning in that regard, eliminating that left turn controversy, which I don't think anyone supports at this point.
I'm going to ask another question, and I've heard the answer. I even know the answer before you give it to me, but I'm sure there's got to be some other people sitting in this room wondering why in the world Caltrans controls traffic lights on Bear Valley Road.
Well, only at the ramps, at the northbound ramp and the southbound ramp. That's in their right-of-way. That interchange is within Caltrans right-of-way where the ramp intersections are. And it's the same as on Nisqually Road or any other interchange. They control the ramp intersection.
I understand that, but why would they care about controlling traffic lights on an off-ramp or an on-ramp? What possible importance could that be to Caltrans?
They don't care what happens on Bear Valley Road. What they care about is making sure that traffic does not back up onto their freeway. That's their only concern. They could care
not
less.
Working.
It's not about Bear Valley Road.
It is not working.
He's 100% correct.
I didn't say it was working, but they really don't care, and I don't mean this to sound callous. They really don't care what happens on Bear Valley Road. All they care about is what happens that affects their freeway.
That is true, actually, yeah. But the good thing is that now we're just getting to the point where we can actually have communication, and that's going to solve a lot of the issues we've had in the past.
Yeah,
moving
the
in
item
the right
that's
direction.
before you tonight actually should help in that regard because it will retime the lights on both of those roads, both La Mesa Nisqually and on Bear Valley Road, hopefully making things better.
So, as a part of whatever comes back as a result of this, are we going to have an opportunity to discuss those things? I mean, what the purpose of this is to kind of coordinate the traffic signals, but that could be a bigger issue, a bigger conversation about how we can address that long term.
Yeah, the Bear Valley Road interchange is really a completely different project, different issue if you're talking about ramp realignments, but there's a relatively low cost just to replace controllers, to establish communication. You know, that would be probably more in the less than the $50,000 range. So that's not a huge impact.
Okay, well then if it needs to come back separately, I'd like to have that discussion at some point.
And I agree with Ryan on that realignment. Maybe the city managers could, I think the attitude on the Hesperia Council today is different than it was 5 years ago about that realignment project. And maybe we can find the money. I don't know.
I agree.
Mayor Garcia, I do believe there is a speaker card on this item that's been
For
submitted.
D6? 06 and 7. You're right. E.T. Snell.
E.T. Snell, Apple Valley, political activist, investigative political reporter. I've been going to meetings for years, folks, and what we need here, I'm glad you snapped to Caltrans because, gentlemen, the buck stops here. That's your city. And what they do with it, if they run the traffic all the way to San Bernardino, it's still your city. You're still responsible. So I'd be calling your little city attorney over there and say, hey, wait a minute, this is our city and they're ruining it. If you guys took, now I'm from Irwindale originally, where I started my political activism in the 70s. We had a city engineer over there that was dialed and tuned in. I have no idea who's running your lights, who's running the traffic patterns. My God. It's I've been around the desert since the 80s. You get stuck on Bear Valley, dude, and it's over. Don't have a hot smoking Dodge pickup truck because you're not getting through town. You guys what you need to do is go out and get some outside consultants that know what the hell they're doing because you got big traffic problems there. Get some guys that their neurons are firing and, that'll say, wait a minute, you got your city attorney over there. That guy's got that's your pit bull, dude. You can turn him loose on these people. Instead of the situation is now, that's turned on us. You ever try to drive through Victorville in some of the areas? Using some of the off-ramps? You almost got time to cook an egg on the sidewalk, coming down off Mojave and making a left there. And then if you're coming the other way, 2 seconds, one car, bam, whoop, it's red. It's common sense. You ought to pass a city ordinance right now, stop this horse manuring around, and make all lights, orange lights, 4 seconds. Does that sound feasible? I mean, we got to put this back together. And that traffic down Bear Valley, if you go talk to Carlos Alvarado, it was, from Irwindale. Boy, he had stuff dialed in, and wow, because I don't know whether it's done for business, if it's just done for evilness or out of stupidity or what, but there are a lot of ways to resolve this problem, and I'm just hoping we can get it together. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That's the only card that I had for 6.
Madam Mayor,
I'll move approval for the
second.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, second by Mr. Cox. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries unanimously.
Now we move on to D7, red flags statistical review. And do I call for the cards first? Or do we have the presentation first? Okay.
Are you going over cards first?
No,
Okay, we're going to have a...
first.
Then we'll do your presentation, then we've got a comment before we turn it back over to the council and public.
Okay, good evening, Mayor Garcia, members of the City Council. My name's Sam Lucci. I'm the police chief assigned to Victorville. I represent the Victorville Police Department. I'll get right into it. In 2007, the City of Victorville entered into a contract with Redflex Traffic Systems for the installation of a photo enforcement system. Originally, there were a total of 16 approaches at 11 intersections equipped with red light camera equipment, which you see on the screen above you. If you'll notice at the bottom of the screen, the red light camera equipment became operational in 2008. A little explanation. Approach is a direction of travel. Each intersection can have up to 8 approaches, and an approach is an angle in which the camera fires. 2010 marked the first amendment between Redflex and the City of Victorville, which was number 1, to extend the term of the contract, and number 2, to modify the contract, which included the removal of some designated approaches. 6 out of 16 approaches were removed, which are highlighted in yellow. Give you a chance to look at those. What you see in this slide is every intersection and its respective red light camera approach in operation since 2010. There are 7 intersections with a total of 10 approaches. Before I get into some actual statistics, I want to share with you the primary collision factors, or what we call PCFs, commonly associated with collisions at traffic signal controlled intersections. California Vehicle Code Section 22350 is the primary collision factor that is most often assigned to what you would see as rear-end collisions involving intersections. California Vehicle Code 21801 is a right-of-way violation. Those would be your broadside collisions or T-bones and your head-on collisions. California Vehicle Code 21453 A and C are your red light violations, either running a circular red or a red arrow, and those would also produce broadside collisions and head-on collisions. As you can see, since 2009, reported collisions have dropped significantly at intersections equipped with red light cameras. This graph not only shows you the data in the 6 years since red light cameras were installed, but it also shows data from the 6 years prior to the red light cameras being installed. You're probably wondering what the data shows at intersections without red light cameras. Included were other like intersections that experienced large volumes of traffic that do not have red light cameras. As you can see, there was a noted decrease in those intersections as well. We are seeing a significant reduction in reported crashes, not only at red light camera intersections, but citywide. Is that because of Redflex or the red light cameras? This data shows the count of all reported collisions citywide by year. The blue column marks 2008, which was the year the red light camera equipment became operational. This data shows the total number of citations issued by Victorville deputies. Red light camera processed incidents reflect every time the equipment fires, less rejections for a total number of notices printed. Notices printed include citations, which are actual tickets, and courtesy notices. An example of a courtesy notice would be a gender mismatch or something of that sort, where the courtesy notice is mailed to the registered owner of a vehicle asking that they identify the driver.
See, in the dark color are rejections? The brown?
No. The 30, for instance, on year 2014, 39,075 were how many times that system fired. Less the rejections for one reason or another. for a total of 18,005 notices that were mailed out. Some of those notices are actual tickets and some aren't. There's about 30 to 35% courtesy notices represented in that 18,000 number.
What accounts for that, the fact that you had it fired but you didn't send a notice?
My technical person who reviews the red light camera system could probably better answer that question.
Majority of my rejections are based on weather, sun glare, paper plates. We can't issue a citation with paper plates. Multiple vehicles blocking the view of the limit line. If I can't see the vehicle actually committing it at the limit line, I reject it. Photo quality is a major rejection.
Were any of those people that came in and appealed it directly to you, or does that come later?
That comes later.
Any kind of lawful reason to dismiss the incident right up front. As I mentioned, I don't know if you caught this, but out of the 18,005 notices or tickets sent out, 30 to 35% of them are courtesy notices. I thought this was an interesting bit of information that the citizens and the council might like to see. The three numbers are percentages of the total number of citations issued. As you can see, 27% were issued to Victorville City residents. 72% were out of other California residents, and then 1% was out of state.
Would that be, what, Apple Valley and Hesperia? Or?
Correct. Anybody that doesn't live in the city of Victorville would be your other California resident. What are we seeing in other high desert cities? Although not as drastic, we're also seeing a decline in Hesperia in some of our neighboring cities. I chose to compare Hesperia's collision data from 2002 to present, and also Apple Valley's, because they're bordering cities. They probably are they are the biggest cities up here to compare to. I just wanted to answer the question, what are other cities seeing? And they're seeing a decline as well, but not as drastic as Victorville's. Excuse me, I'm fighting some allergies. This is the count of collision data since 2002 for the town of Apple Valley as well. Any questions that I can answer for the council?
Yeah, I have one. Lots, probably. But
I figured you did, Mr. Kennedy.
Start with one. I've done some reading of studies, and I've been looking at, I Googled a bunch of them, and they're all over the place, depending on what the outcome they were after. They're either for or against, but none of them showed any kind of results like this. None. In fact, most of them say, there wasn't a whole lot of difference. How do you account for this kind of a dramatic reduction here when nobody else seems to be experiencing that? Any idea?
Well, is this as a result solely because of red flags? I don't know. It could be other factors such as advanced vehicle technology, computer traction control, anti-lock braking systems, a more behaved driving force. Those are all factors. But one thing...
Also be factors in Hesperia and Apple Valley, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think what you're asking me for is, do I think it's the red flex system that's causing the dramatic decline? I don't know, but since 2008, that's the data.
The behavior has changed.
I think so. I think it has had an impact. Is it solely responsible? I don't know. I can't answer that.
Sam, I'm looking at a memo that came from Sean McGlade on March 11th of this year. Indicates that current amount owed to Red Flex is north of 1.1 million. And I don't know if this is a question for you or a city manager, but in essence, that becomes a liability to the city. Is that not true?
That is not true, actually.
And that is not a question for me.
No, it's not. The way this works is only the amount collected from citation goes to pay that debt. At the end of the contract, which would be 1 year after the cancellation, essentially, whatever amount is remaining is written off by Red Flex. There's no requirement on the city's behalf to pay that, to pay anything over and above the amount that's actually collected from the citations.
Well, that's good to know, because I'd hate for us to have that as a future liability, much like our retirement issue that we were addressing at our last council meeting. But Sam, more on the issue of the particular intersections and the ones that currently are monitored by cameras. Are there any that you would say make sense versus don't make sense? They all make sense. They all don't make sense. Can you?
That's a very good question. There are intersections that are equipped with Red Flex equipment that produce, in comparison, produce very little citations. Intersections that, quite frankly, if you remove the Red Flex systems, we probably wouldn't see a change. There's two in particular that I can name off the top of my head. One is Green Tree and 7th. Very low producer, relatively safe intersection. The highest producer is Bear Valley and Amargosa. And personally, I have seen some positive change there over the years. And again, I don't know if it's directly reflected to the Red Flex system, but there has been some improvement. The next least producing intersection is D and 7th. So those two are very low producers, and quite frankly, I don't think that the statistics would change with or without the system in place there.
Okay, and then a follow-up question to that. Assuming you didn't have red light cameras today and you just had your patrol officers on motorcycles, could you not affect the same change?
Well, without red light cameras, our deputies would periodically monitor driver behavior at intersections previously equipped with red light camera equipment, but certainly not to the extent that a 24-hour camera can do.
And that's understood, but I mean, currently, how often do the patrol officers on bikes monitor intersections with lights and actually pull people over for
frequently?
Because I mean, I see them pulling people over for speeding tickets, but I don't ever see them pulling them over for red lights.
No, it's frequent.
Running red lights. Do you have data that can be provided to the council on that?
I don't have that data tonight. I can produce that data if that's what you want to see.
Because I'd like to see, you know, what they're doing along those lines at other intersections that aren't being monitored by the red light cameras. Again, and you know better than I, but when I do see them out there, it tends to be that they're more focused on people speeding down Green Tree Boulevard, which I'm sure some of us will all attest to. We see them there, or Bear Valley Road, but not so much at intersections where they'd be running red lights.
The deputies often will focus on the areas where we're seeing the most collisions. And quite frankly, at those intersections, we're not seeing as many as we used to, so you won't see them working those areas. Their mission is to analyze the data, find out where we're having the injury collisions, and those are the areas that they're trying to get people to slow down at. It's generally California Vehicle Code Section 22350, or speeding, unsafe speed, that's producing most of our crashes.
Have you had second thoughts about removing the camera from Park and Palmdale? That which to me seems like one of the most dangerous.
There again, I think it's an issue of intersections being
so close.
Yeah. And the timing being thrown off by emergency vehicles. The same issue you guys were talking about at Bear Valley and the off-ramp.
Doug, exactly what are you looking for the council?
So, we're really looking for direction. The council, if the council would like to extend the contract, it can simply extend on its own. If the council would like to cancel the contract, we do have to give a 30-day notice, which you would need to give late in May. The purpose of tonight's meeting was simply to present the data and get some direction from council on how you'd like us to proceed. My recommendation would be to go ahead and take the public comment and then have some discussion at the council level on if there's a desire to continue with any red light cameras or not. If the answer is no, then that's a fairly easy thing to accomplish. If the council does have some desire to retain some of them, perhaps eliminate some of them, you could give us further direction on working with Redflex to either modify the contract. I would actually have a different recommendation that we actually cancel the contract or allow the contract to cancel, renegotiate. But that's a discussion for another night, depending on what the council's desire is. So before we get into the public comment, I did have a bit of a statement I'd like to read just to help kind of frame the discussion. Thanks, Sam. And the reason for this is because I don't see a packed house like we have in the past for red light cameras. I don't know if that's good or bad. But this has been an issue that has become very volatile at every one of the meetings. So that's the only reason why I wanted to make a few statements and to kind of go over some of the facts that we do know. This has been contentious and contentious. Mr. Kennedy and I had a bit of a banter back and forth as to whether I meant contentious or contentious, and frankly both work. Just to go over some of the facts that I think get lost in the public opinion, the city receives no revenue from these cameras. There's only a small cost recovery to cover the staff that work on these things. The intent from day one was for traffic safety. There was a discussion about potential for revenue, but it was never the overarching desire, nor has there been anything other than that cost recovery. The reduction in citations, the reduction in accidents, seems to indicate that the cameras have been effective in reducing crashes. That's good. I can attest that at Bear Valley and Amargosa, there's been a reduction or pretty much an elimination of what was gridlock on a regular basis at that intersection, and I would attribute it to those red light cameras. But there are negatives as well. Obviously, a significant portion of the population, as we've heard every time, doesn't like these. They're opposed to their use because of the perceived unfairness at not having an officer, basically having a machine write a citation for you. There's an unfairness in the amount of the citation. It's $489. What the public may not know is that the city council doesn't control that. That's controlled by the state legislature. We don't have any way to affect that dollar amount, but that is an unfair dollar amount. So it leaves the council in really a very difficult situation. There's no necessarily wrong answers here. There's good reasons to cancel the contract. There's good reasons to continue with the cameras. One thing that has happened in the past that I hope doesn't happen tonight is our police chief has been attacked for statistics. And people like to cite that, well, statistics can be skewed. Statistics can be used to display whatever you want. In this case, Captain Lucia, our police chief, is a man of integrity. He's built his career over these 20-plus years on that integrity, and all he did was simply pull the data from his system. There was no manipulation, so I hope that doesn't come up tonight. And I hope he doesn't get attacked for presenting data that may not support what you do support. So, lastly, as I mentioned, the council has a very tough decision to make based on these positives and negatives. The cameras are effective but unpopular. Keep in mind, members of the public, I implore you to keep in mind that no one in this council was here when the contract was originally approved in 2007. Mr. McEachran was here in 2010 when there was an amendment, but that amendment was approved based on a lesser of two evils. There was nobody really in favor of the cameras at that time. So if you're worked up about these red light camera tickets, no one sitting up here is responsible. They're not your enemy. They're here to hear your concerns and make a decision on how we're going to move forward. So with that, I appreciate the indulgence of letting me hopefully frame the discussion to a positive way.
Mayor Garcia, if I might too, I just want to add one other piece of information. There is recently introduced in the California legislature a bill seeking to eliminate red light cameras, and it would have the effect essentially of eliminating them 2016. And with respect to contracts in existence, it would require that the city do an annual report as to the effectiveness of that camera in order to keep it in place. But no indication as to which way that's going to go. It's being authored by Assemblyperson Harper, and it's bill number 1160. But again, it's just been introduced, and we don't know where it's going to go.
So we don't know for sure if they will be
No idea, and there's no indications which way it's going to go.
Totally.
Sorry?
They will be discontinued, or
If the bill's passed, we don't know which way. All I'm saying is there is a bill pending. It's a statewide concern, and Assemblyperson Ziefman introduced a bill. So
you won't know until 2016.
you won't know until later this year.
Well, I do have some comments and questions, but if you have cards, I'd rather hear from. Right now we're gathering testimony, and I think all the testimony is meaningful, and those individuals who want to speak to this item, I'd like to hear what they have to say.
Okay. First of all, I have E.T. Snail, item D7.
E.T. Snell, etsnell.com. Mr. Kennedy, when you were Googling, did you have the opportunity to Google ReadyFlix corruption? ReadyFlix corruption? You should.
I heard.
Because, yeah, I know you did. Well, you should Google it. You should have Googled that one up, because I'll tell you what. You know, and I think the possibility exists that maybe this learned council maybe thought they were putting them in for safety. But dudes, beam me up, Scotty, man. You know, we got this big traffic problem in here with the lights and, you know, and the setting them. And look, I'm 68 years old, and I love driving. And I'll tell you what, when you get in Victorville, it's like Victimville with those lights. But then to bring this in, you know, this ReadyFlix thing, and, you know, do you know what that does? My SSI check from the government's almost 900. You know what that 468 does? It puts me in the food. That puts me in your food banks. That's where it puts me. And, you know, what you're doing here is just, you know, it's pretty simple. We need to take the whole traffic situation, hire somebody like Carlos Alvarado or somebody that does good, been around 30, 40 years, or knows how to run high traffic areas, and bring them in. Come on, you guys, you put this all together. You know, take that stuff back from Caltrans, because how many people, has there anybody died in that off-ramp over there? I mean, we got some serious problems here. And I really feel, as far as the police department, you know, it's a total screaming embarrassment to some of those people over there of what this traffic thing. I do investigative reporting, and I get a chance to talk to some of them, and I don't divulge all my sources. But it's a complete embarrassment to the police department what's going on with this traffic thing. You know, so it's pretty. And then we have these signals. Some of them are set 2 seconds, and some of them 4. I'm going, wait a minute. It just seems so evil. Is this done by design? You know, I mean, you know, I appreciate your giving me the opportunity to speak, but this ReadyFlix is a joke. And it's...
You have 30 seconds, Mr. Snell.
It's so sad that it's getting perpetrated on them. And how about the people out of state? When I went down there was a guy here, he drove 100 miles for his daughter, and they wouldn't let him take care of it. So, and they both work. So the hardship they're putting on people. I'll stand out there in my clown costume. That'll slow them down too. You know, there's all sorts of ways to slow them down. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Charles Colleran. Sorry about that.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and gentlemen of the City Council. I have property in Victorville. I lived in Victorville. I've been up here since 1968. I was discharged from George Air Force Base. And the traffic up here, the reason the issuing of tickets and the red light citations are lower is because if you get on Bear Valley Road headed west from approximately Cypress west to the freeway, you can't go but 2 miles an hour. It takes you 45 minutes on any evening after 2 o'clock. And I don't think the red light cameras are fair to the people, because as soon as you go over the freeway, if you don't get stuck in an intersection, you get over the top of the freeway and the light will turn. Somebody will be making a left turn, you're behind them, and only 2 vehicles making that left turn, and you get stuck in the middle, and there's the flash of the camera. And what does that do to your attitude on Victorville? There's also over there on Hesperia Road, if you're in the left turn lane on Hesperia Road, there's a double left turn lane. People making a left, I went by there 3 times this week. Twice I got caught in the middle. I was waiting for the flash. Maybe it was broke. I didn't get flashed. But they don't have enough yellow caution to let the people clear the intersection. The only people making money is Red Flex. And who gets the attitude when they're driving down the street? Oh, who wants to go Bear Valley Road because it's the city of Victorville and they don't know what they're doing? Like I said, I used to live in Victorville. I moved to Apple Valley for better reasons. And I hope you just eliminate Red Flex and keep some of our money in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have Maggie Lowe.
She had to step out, but still wants to speak.
Well, she's the only one I have left.
Okay, good evening, Your Honor and the Council. I'm going to be honest with you. I could talk for a very, very long time into the wee hours of the morning on this subject, but what I did to spare you that is I printed 12 pages off of a variety of internet articles from neighboring cities such as Riverside, etc., and I highlighted some points about it. And I did not have time to make copies. I am going to leave it, and I'd like for you guys to just scan it, review it. But we could sit here and talk all night about studies and statistics, and at the end of the day, they really don't mean anything in my book, in my opinion. And I want to, about whether they're good or not good. And I want to tell you, I got one of the first red light cameras tickets issued in, I believe, 2009 or 10 at, where else? Bear Valley and Amargosa. I want to tell you how that played out in court when I pled guilty with an explanation. The court didn't even want to hear my explanation. The court looked at my driving record, my age, and said, 3 tickets since 1973. How do you feel about traffic school? I said, not real well. And he said, I don't blame you. He said, how do you feel about, instead of, I believe it was $462, how do you feel about $167? I said, I feel real good about that. I'll write a check today. Of course, then my insurance came due the next month, and I saw the point, and that's another penalty of that logic or illogic. And so I did the online traffic school. But I'm sorry, Doug, I can't remember if your last name's Roberts or Robertson.
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 One of the few things you can do to upset me is call me Roberts.
Well, I'm glad I asked for clarification. But I heard said earlier this evening that the red light cameras are not a money issue for the coffers of the city of Victorville, which I had heard that, and I'm delighted again to hear that's the case. But the fees are set by the state of California, and look how unfair it is according to these articles. $50 in New York, where the majority of the world's millionaires live, and here we are in poor San Bernardino County, and we're being asked to pay $400 or $500 for a red light camera. I have a problem with that. I have a problem with the cameras in general, but that's just an added contemptuous act, in my opinion. So that's how it played out with my red light.
You have 30 seconds.
Oh, that's it? Okay. Bottom line for me is, Captain Lucia knows I stand staunchly and firmly behind the Victorville Police Department, a.k.a. the Sheriff's Department. But I object to the red light cameras because Sixth Amendment of our Constitution, a right to confront our accuser.
10 seconds.
And the Fourth Amendment, search and seizure. And I will always stand firmly and vocally on anything to do with our Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the last card that I have.
Go ahead, Eric. Thank you, Jim. Madam Mayor, I have a comment. And, looking at the agenda, if the request is for guidance, I'll simply state that I do not support red light cameras. I fundamentally believe the challenge is they do not stop traffic accidents. They, and the as far as the statistics go of why they were going down, they also seem to be trending back up. But, quite frankly, with my own pocketbook, those numbers also correlate to the recession. And when I look at the cost of gas, that did change my traffic patterns and how far I was willing to go and which stores I was willing to go. But those traffic cameras also changed my driving habits. Certainly I would just prefer to avoid them altogether. There's a lot of things we can do as a council to affect quality of life, and I believe this is one of them. If you look at the price or the cost of a ticket at $469 or whatever it was, that was the same amount of money that cost for me to put 3 boys into soccer last year with their shoes, registration, and equipment. If I had gotten a ticket like that, that would have meant no soccer for 3 great kids. And in this particular area, I said it while I ran for this seat, there's a challenge out there to keep the money we do have, and it's just not reasonable. So I am definitely not supporting this, keeping the red light cameras.
Madam Mayor, I had some comments. One of the things that have occurred, and our city manager clarified a lot of it, none of us were here when that contract was entered into, but in looking at the record, at that time it was a safety issue. As far as I can tell, it was never a money issue. What has bothered me is the mass amount of misinformation and misunderstanding. This young lady talked about the constitutional rights. That's been settled in the court. It is solved. It has nothing to do with constitutional rights. It's not constitutionally protected. The courts have ruled against that. The appellate courts have ruled against that. Also, the amount of the ticket bothers me, but if a deputy gives you a ticket or you get it because of the red light, it is the same. And so the amount of the ticket has nothing to do with the red light. It is set by the state legislature. I can't imagine that a court who doesn't call a judge up for judicial review if, in fact, they're only charging $50 when the state legislature says otherwise. The judge has discretion. They don't have that much discretion. And our judges here have been reducing the red light cameras by almost half if there's a good reason or the person appears. The other question that I had asked very early of the city engineer, we continually hear letters to the editor, individuals saying that it's a trap because the yellow lights aren't set, they're too short, and yet the city engineer has testified over and over, privately and publicly, that this is set by a code that they follow. It is in accordance with the law, and I don't want the city council in the business of saying how long the yellow light should be, because I think we really would be subject to a lot of litigation the first time there was an accident at that intersection. And so we have the problem. Is it a safety issue or not? And this is why I'm glad we're having this meeting, so that we can get this information. Unfortunately, we still have the same misinformation being repeated over and over. So it doesn't come down to a safety issue, it comes down to a political issue. And the courts have ruled, the state legislature has ruled. I have asked that the mayors of the Mountain Desert Division of the League of California City get together and petition the state in regard to the high cost of traffic fines that the state legislature has imposed. I think it's outrageous. But if you get a ticket from a deputy, it's probably going to be higher than if you get a red light camera. And that's not going to change until the state legislature changes it. What is amazing is that I listened to the police chief, and the safety issue is a real issue. The traffic accidents have gone down, but we really don't know why. I'm not sure we're going to know why. One of the things that we do here is that we know Victorville has red light cameras, and so we're more cautious. I'm sure you read in the paper that the college is thinking about putting in cameras. It changes people's attitude, and it's a safety issue. Cal State San Bernardino is putting in cameras. Changes the attitude of people, and it's a safety issue. City Council in Hesperia recently talked about animal control clinic, and a councilman who's against red lights or against the cameras indicated that they build it, they do want cameras because people have a tendency to be more careful, I think was his choice of words, when they know they're on camera. So if you read the articles in the Sun Telegram and the Daily Press, the argument is for cameras. I've heard individuals say that they do want cameras, but just not red lights. And you can't pick and choose. If cameras make it safer, then it's safer. If it doesn't make any difference, then it doesn't make any difference. It's a matter of what the facts show. I can't think of anyone for a safety issue that wouldn't want the camera, especially if it's someone, you or your family, that has disappeared or is missing, and a camera could correct that, or a crime that's committed, or a camera that's correct that, but you can't pick and choose when to use a camera and when not. And that's why the courts have said you can use cameras and they can be used as an enforcement tool. It's a safety issue. Now, that said, I wasn't here when they made the decision to put in the red light cameras, and I'm not an advocate of the red light cameras. What is so sad is there's so much misinformation, and the people who don't want them is just simply using the wrong information. Doesn't make me for or against the red light cameras. I'm still looking at the safety issue, what's best for the citizens of Victorville, what's best for the city. We're here representing the people. That's the only reason we are here. And it's interesting because I tried to do a survey myself. I wanted to know what the public felt about red light cameras. And here's what I found out. And I've been asking this question for about 6 months. Every individual that got a ticket is opposed to them, and every individual that didn't get a ticket is for them. And there you have it.
Thank you.
I got a question, if I may, for Sam. I'm looking at the graphs with the collisions dropping, and I'm looking at the bar chart with the notices printed. We've got more flashing incidents and more notices sent, while collisions are dropping like a rock. What do you think? So we're sending as many or more notices out, so there are just as many red light camera incidents, but no collisions, or the collisions are just dropping like a rock. What do you think?
I'm not sure I understand the question. You're asking me why does the number of activations increase, yet collisions are decreasing?
Yeah, because it would seem to say when you're sending that many notices that people are running red lights pretty much the same pace they ever have, or having the infractions. But the collisions have dropped like a rock.
I don't know at what pace they were running the red lights prior to the installation of the equipment. I'm trying to figure out how we can get to this, this answer here. If Brandon could bring back up to the PowerPoint, there were two numbers. The one on top was the total number of firings, and the below number was the actual notices mailed out. And I believe in 2014 there were 18,005 mailed out, and there were 39,000 and some number of activations. Okay, I wanted to look at that to see if the 18,005 was the highest number since 2008, and it is. So what you're saying is we're continuing to see an increase in the number of activations, and we're continuing to see an increase in the number of notices mailed out, which includes tickets and courtesy notices. And we're seeing collisions decline. I'm not sure how to answer your question.
I'm not either. What it says to me, I guess, is by some odd result, we're getting a dramatic drop in collisions, which anything that does that, I'm pretty much in favor.
And we're seeing a decline in other jurisdictions without them, and we're seeing a decline in intersections without the equipment.
But what does that suggest? Doesn't that suggest that people conscious of red light cameras have changed behavior? They aren't selectively careful about chasing yellow lights. The problem is not running red lights. The problem is chasing yellow lights. You're trying to get through a yellow light when you know you're pushing it. And most of us who have a safety consciousness are going to say, I'm not going to push it. Every one of us sitting up here and everyone in the room at one time or another has pushed a yellow light and ended up running a red light. What I'm getting at is that because there's some consciousness of the cameras, and nobody knows for sure where they all are, we've all sort of backed off this
It's absolutely a factor.
to chase yellow lights.
Absolutely, it's a factor. And without polling everybody in this city and getting their personal opinions of this, I can tell you personally it does affect my driving behavior in this city.
It affects mine. It affects mine. I got to tell you, I don't care what the price of that red light ticket is. I don't care if it's $400 or $800. It doesn't matter, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I don't run red lights. And I'm not going to get a red light camera ticket. And if I get one, shame on me, I deserve to pay it. But that's why the price doesn't matter. If you don't run red lights, you don't even have to worry about the cameras. If you don't chase yellow lights foolishly, you don't need to worry about it. You know, we've heard constitutional arguments. The fact is, people sitting on this dais and out in that audience, speaking at the platform, we don't decide what's constitutional. We have a long-standing system in this country that says the court decides. And so far, they've decided. It's not a constitutional issue. It's not a privacy issue. You drive your car into a public intersection, you have no right or expectation to privacy. I'm sorry. You just don't. I don't, you don't, nobody does. If we don't like cameras at intersections, then what about cameras in banks? What about cameras in 7-Elevens where we're able to identify shooters and criminals and so on? I mean, I think all this, what bothers me the most is the opposition. I don't understand the opposition. The last line in every opposing argument that they never say, that never gets said, but it's there, I want to be able to run a red light free of charge. That's the bottom line of that opposing argument. And I just don't get it. I don't get it. And if that happens, and frankly it happened to my wife, she went to sheriff's station, they didn't know who she was. She said, I got caught behind a truck in the middle of an intersection. And they said, you're right, that one's got no merit to it. There's a course of action. If you think you got a raw deal, go to the sheriff's station. They'll reject them. Sam?
I'd like to clarify a misconception that I heard from the audience. If you are inside an intersection and you have entered that intersection legally, which means you have crossed the limit line while the light was still yellow, and you were somehow brought to a stop in that intersection, the red light camera equipment will not flash on you. It will not fire. And if it does, it'll be rejected.
Now I understand that my grandson was lying.
Yes, he was. Did he show you the video? This is not an easy decision for the council, and I get it. And I want to provide the data and the numbers, and the decision rests on you. Thank God it's not on me.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, frankly, I think my outspokenness on red light cameras, along with BIA getting mad at me, was probably the reason I barely got elected last time. I suppose if we had election today, I'd get thrown out. The political pressure on this is intense, and it makes no sense to me. I mean, if you look at the data, if you look at the facts, how can you be opposed to this? I've said enough.
Mayor Garcia, if I might. Sam, first of all, I appreciate you answering all my questions earlier. You, like us, you weren't here when this decision was originally made, and you kind of inherited this and have had to deal with it. As Doug mentioned, in 2010, I think we renegotiated the contract and got rid of several cameras. And I had the opportunity to be a part of getting rid of those cameras, but I have been a staunch opponent of cameras since I've been elected, and I'm not a fan of them today. But much like Mayor Cox had alluded to, just kind of doing his own poll, I went to Facebook. I said, hey, Victorville residents, people out there that like my page or don't like my page, tell me what you think. I have a former mayor commenting about how he's opposed to this. I have 13 other people opposed to it. I had one person out of almost 5,100 people reached, that were one person that was actually said, I've seen how it's prevented people from stopping. People who have not received a ticket are not in favor of this. People who have received a ticket are definitely not in favor of this. But I have plenty of people that have communicated, reached out to me, talked to me personally, made phone calls to me, and said, get rid of them, I don't like them. But I think the issue is not constitutional, whether it may be or may not be. It's not an issue of what's the cost of the ticket, because we all know that if you had a deputy on a motorcycle pull out after someone that ran a red light at Amargosa and Bear Valley Road, the fine would be the same, would it not?
It would.
Thank you. That none of those arguments, much like Mayor Pro Tem Cox had alluded to, hold weight. None of them do, because at the end of the day, everything is the same. So the question to this council is, we have been seated with a policy decision that was made by a previous council, not by us. It is up to us whether or not we want to uphold that policy decision or we want to do away with it. Quite frankly, from my perspective, I have no desire to see cameras at intersections anymore, whether or not they promote public safety or not, because I know that you can do it with your own deputies. I know you can accomplish the same thing with those your deputies that are on the bikes out there that are patrolling our streets daily. And if we have to allocate funds for you to hire more, or direct you to put them on those particular corners at those particular intersections that are the most problematic, I'm sure we can affect the same change. At the end of the day, and again, this is not, Sam's looking to us. What do you want me to do? It's a policy decision.
Yes.
Do you want cameras on your street corners monitoring people who run red lights, who, by the way, and I wish you had these facts and figures, how many people ran red lights before there were cameras versus how many people run red lights today? People still run red lights. This has not done anything to prevent that, and you can see it based upon the numbers that Redflex provides to us. So, from my perspective, I don't think that we need to keep this contract in place. If you're looking for direction, you're looking for emotion, I don't know what you're looking for tonight, Doug. I'd ask you to clearly define that to the council. But from my perspective, I'm ready to say, let's not renew this contract.
And
that's not political. I've always stated that since I got elected.
I know there's more comments from the council, but that's essentially what we're looking for at this point. If the council, a majority of the council wants to simply terminate the contract, I think that's direction you can give to us tonight. If a majority of the council wants red light cameras to continue in some fashion, I have a different recommendation, which would actually be to terminate the contract at the end of its term and actually renegotiate a contract for the future, because I think there's a better way on a go-forward basis, if that's what the council wants. But I think that's exactly what we're asking tonight is this new city council. What's your opinion of red light cameras in general? Would you like them to continue in some fashion? Obviously, some are more effective than others from a gridlock and a traffic safety standpoint. That's the ones that we would want to keep, if you want to keep any. There are some, I think, and Sam thinks, that could easily go away.
Now, if we have the option to discontinue the contract now and then renegotiate for future, if we decide we just want some, not all of them, I don't know what the council's thinking may be on that.
I have a question. I had understood this was for a statistical review, to get the presentation, information, gather information, and then it was going to be at a different meeting where we actually took the action. I believe if that had been on here to take an action, you would have other people in the audience who'd want to speak on that. Clarify that?
Sure. The action, if the action from the council or the direction from the council is to terminate the contract per the terms at the end of June, then that's a decision that can be made right now. If the council is interested in keeping some or all of the cameras, the recommendation would be to bring that back at a future meeting.
That's right.
For discussion. We would like, if that's the option of a majority of the council, we would like some direction on how that might proceed. I could see it essentially directing staff to review each of the individual approaches and come back with a recommendation to keep each one that makes sense, and to negotiate some either change in the contract or termination and a new contract on a go-forward basis that could actually provide some revenue to the city in the future that could be used for additional law enforcement. So that ultimately, that's only a decision if a majority of the council wants to retain some of the cameras.
I think, from my perspective, Doug, that puts the policy decision in this council's hands. We terminate the existing contract. We tell Redflex, look, you want to bring something back to us, then you bring something back to us. Then that becomes a policy decision of this council on a go-forward basis effective July 1st. But as to this contract, I would like to make a motion to terminate as of June 30th, when it automatically would terminate anyway, right?
And that would be my recommendation regardless, would be to terminate this contract effective June 30th, and should the council want to continue with some red light cameras, that be completely renegotiated as a new contract for a future meeting.
I don't, but if you want to bring that back before this council, that's your prerogative.
It depends on how many of you want to continue them at all. That's really the direction that we need. Is if there's 3 votes to terminate it and not have red light cameras, then the decision is made tonight. If there's only 2, which I'm trying to do the math here, Not that we've heard from everybody, but if there's only 2 and there's some interest on the other part of the other 3 of continuing with some cameras, we can take that direction and renegotiate or negotiate a new contract after terminating this one.
Well, since we do have a better understanding of statistics, and at least I feel that I understand better, you know, whether it's a positive or negative for them, we could continue this and make our decision at the next meeting, or
I believe there's a motion
No,
on.
if
I do. Yeah, there is a motion.
I'd second that motion.
I was going to say, if I saw the data said they weren't effective, that there was no real benefit, who needs the grief? I don't need to have people shout at me and tell me I'm an idiot. We'd get rid of them. What bothers me is the part that I can't quite reconcile is if you look at the citations, if you look at the number of camera infractions, it hasn't changed. In fact, it's increased slightly. But the collision effects have dropped. Are they unconnected or are they related? I don't know. I think what we need to do is, I mean, I don't mind this. If you want to cancel this one, and everybody wants to do that, I'd go along with it. But I'm not prepared to get rid of red light cameras. I think there's been too much positive effect.
Ma'am, you just interrupted.
There is a motion and a second. Are we ready?
Madam Mayor, let me step in for a moment. If I could ask that the audience please remain silent. The audience, the public has had a chance to speak. At this point, it's the council's turn to deliberate amongst themselves. The distractions of discussions with the audience is unprofessional, and it really is disruptive to the inner workings of the meeting. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, you know, if the council wants to get rid of the red light camera contract, that's okay with me. I wasn't here when it went into effect, and the amazing thing is the accusations that have been made about city ripping people off, which they don't, and that they've rigged the cameras, which they can't, and that we've set the salaries, which they can't. It's amazing. If you went just upon facts on the matter, they don't hold any water. You know, people have decided they're for it or they're against it, and they're entitled to their opinion. As I said before, it's a safety issue. My concern, and again, if you want to eliminate them, I don't care. I'd vote for it. But we had on Armagosa and Bear Valley Road such gridlock that at different times we had to have 2 officers on motorcycles constantly working it, and once we went to red light cameras, we got rid of the gridlock. You get rid of the red light camera, we're going to have gridlock. There are 2 or 3 intersections that we've got to either make a decision to hire more officers to watch those intersections or keep the cameras there. For most intersections, we probably could get rid of them without any effect whatsoever. That's why I was looking forward to this meeting to get all of this data to see if we, in my opinion, to make the best decision possible for the people in the city. But receive the data and they're prepared to move, so be it. In regard to getting the red light camera, we can't, well, we could, but we're not going to. That's not the motion. The motion is to just eliminate it. There's a motion and a second, and we will vote on that at the end of the discussion. I'm not sure now what's going to happen if there's a positive vote to do with the cameras. When you bring it back, I don't think there's going to be a tendency to want to put red light cameras back in the intersections, which means that we are going to be faced with how do we handle those troubled intersections? And I'd like to keep that in mind when we're voting on that, because this is going to be a problem. But you know, red light solved it. It's going to be a problem. We just have to deal with it at the time we deal with it. But tough decision. I didn't expect to make a decision tonight because I didn't think that's what the agenda item said. But here we have a motion and a second. So.
And it's going to be widely misunderstood, because I can see the headline tomorrow morning, if we cancel this contract tonight. It's going to be widely misunderstood that it's settled, that it's over. Not over in my mind. So whether we modify this contract or or look at a new one. It's still got to come to a vote for us. And it makes sense to me. Sam's already suggested two. Maybe there are more than that we ought to eliminate. But there are some that I think we ought to continue with. And I don't want anybody to think that's not going to come back. I hope it, unless you all say it's not going to come back, and I'm by myself.
Part of the reason why we put this on the agenda 2 months before a decision has to be made on this contract was to see if the council wanted more data, if you wanted more input, if you wanted to give us direction to either renegotiate the contract, terminate this contract, and negotiate a new contract effective July 1. There's a lot of options available to the council. As I mentioned to the newspaper, I don't know if it made it in the article, but there's only one direction that could be given tonight, and even it may have to come back. I don't know. It's more of an attorney opinion, but there's only one direction that would end the discussion. That would be to simply terminate the contract and not continue to discuss having red light cameras. The fact that my recommendation would be to terminate the contract regardless, I would, if the council's desire, a majority of the council's desire is to continue with some level of red light camera enforcement, I would recommend that the direction be given to indicate a termination of the contract, but negotiate a new contract effective July 1 on a go-forward basis for those intersections that make sense to the police chief and staff.
The difference between modifying this contract and terminating it and negotiating a new one. What's
There may be just semantics, but this contract carries that debt that you see in the staff report. That is an ongoing debt that is paid by any future citations. I don't know. I have not talked with Redflex. I have no idea their appetite to renegotiate or to eliminate that debt or to have some revenue sharing in the future. I can tell you that traffic safety was the key issue, but there was a discussion about revenue and the potential to add revenue to the city. If it was the council's desire, and I don't want to put words or opinions in anybody's minds, but if it's the council's desire, we could attempt to negotiate with Redflex to have a more fair sharing of that revenue. You see the fairly large numbers in revenues that have gone to Redflex over the course of this contract. None of those dollars came to the city other than that cost recovery. So, their cost for installing the cameras is set. They are in place now. So I would think rather than a flat-out elimination of the cameras, they would be amenable to sharing that revenue stream so that we could potentially add more police officers on our streets or something along those lines. So it just depends on what the attitude of the council is with regard to whether or not we have any red light cameras in the future.
That was a stretch.
So.
Okay, just to clarify, my motion is not to go down that road. My motion is to terminate this contract. If there is a council member that wants to bring red light cameras back before this council on a particular basis for a couple intersections, then that's any council member's prerogative. At the same time, as a council member, I would like to bring back at some point giving direction and additional funds to staff and to our police department to add additional patrol at those various intersections that we have a problem with. So, I mean, if we are going to go down that road, my prerogative tonight and the nature of my motion, which I don't know that I need to restate it, was to terminate the contract effective June 30th.
I would just like to add a couple of things. When you look at this topic, when I first heard about it, I was told that 3 out of 4 people that are polled typically do not support red light cameras. Then recently I saw in the Victor Valley Daily Press online readers poll that 92% of the respondents did not support red light cameras. But either way, whether it's political, emotional, or whatever your point of view is on this, bottom line is this is symbolic. There are a overwhelmingly large amount of intersections that do not have red light cameras. And when I don't believe we're suffering from any epidemic of collisions or running red lights at those other intersections that don't have red light cameras from the numbers we just saw. So if you're talking about removing the cameras, great. But why even mess around with the idea of
2 cameras, 3 cameras, 4 cameras, 5 cameras, whatever it is. We have 7 intersections right now. That is nothing. So if the other neighboring cities aren't suffering from an epidemic of collisions or red light running, and we're not seeing that in the other intersections in our city, it's a lot of spent energy on this topic that, like I said, if people want to be emotional about it, that's fine, but the numbers are there for you. You can twist them around however you want, but there is no difference from what I saw in intersections with or without these cameras. So if collisions are down, let's just keep that in mind. This was brought by another council. I would prefer, if I had a choice, and I was moving up to this city, up to the high desert right now, we're in a period of growth. We've been in a period of decline. And you're telling people you have an option to live in Victorville with red light cameras or Apple Valley, Hesperia, or whatever. I'd choose another city. So, like I said, I thought we had a motion in a second.
I'd like to ask the council to not approve discontinuing this contract until we have options that we can act on at the same time, as you know, a going forward option. So I'm really concerned that if we just flat discontinue this contract, we're not going to be looking at serious other options, and we're going to mislead the public. I'm really concerned.
My concern right now, I think I'll direct this to our attorney. We had a motion in a second, so.
You would have to take action on that motion. If the motion failed, then you could have a second motion that could address the issues essentially that Councilmember Kennedy was raising. But you have to have a vote on this. You've got a vote. You've got a motion and a second, and you should vote on this item after you've finished your discussion. If the motion were to fail, you could bring up another motion. If the motion succeeds, you also then would have the option of asking Doug to put this on the agenda for discussion at a future meeting. I think Doug's concern is that the contract we currently have could certainly be improved either way. So I think that's part of the motivation for allowing this to terminate if you want to terminate it. Either way is to try and improve the contract if there's a desire on the council to continue to want red light cameras. To take action on the motion.
Well, you have to
that's on the
take
floor.
action. I realize that. Does a substitute motion to continue take precedent over the motion on the floor?
You should first, I think you have to vote on the substitute motion. I think what you should do is that would be an amended motion. You could, this goes back to parliamentary procedure. You can make a new motion, take action on the new motion, and I believe that does take precedent, but then you still have to vote on the original motion.
We take a new motion, or?
You could have a subsequent motion.
Motion with
Have
precedent
discussion on the
over
subsequent
motion on the
motion.
floor.
You still have to vote on the original motion.
Motion to delay it, and then we got to come back and vote on whether or not we're going to do it. That doesn't make sense to me.
It is.
You have a motion on the floor right now.
I think what I've made clear to this council is if you want to continue with red light cameras effective July 1st of this year, you have every opportunity to do that, but it will be this council's decision. Don't seat this council with a decision of a past council that didn't sit up here. Allow this motion to be voted upon. If you're not in favor of canceling the red light camera contract, then you're going to be in favor of continuing it and amending it or keeping it the way it is. But at least allow this motion to go forward. If you allow this motion to go forward and you approve this motion, which terminates the contract, if any one individual member of this council wants to bring red light cameras back to this council and say, you know what, I want them on Mariposa and Bear Valley and Amargosa and Bear Valley, where there has been some indication that they might work there, then bring that back. But otherwise, allow this motion with respect to the existing contract, the existing intersections, and the existing contract in its current term, which would expire June 30th, to terminate. That's what I'm asking the council to do.
And I want to clarify something. I think Doug's explanation that canceling the contract eliminates $1,179,000 in debt certainly impresses me. I too think that this contract should be canceled. I don't The only way I'd vote to bring it back is if the police chief recommended, not a council member. You have to deal on safety issues. So I was going to make a substitute motion that we include that, but there's no need to. I'm prepared to vote on the motion. So,
Mayor Pro Tem Cox, just to clarify, I don't have any knowledge of whether or not Redflex would eliminate that debt. My only comment was that I think terminating the contract is preferable to trying to renegotiate it. Terminating it and entering into a new one, if a majority of the council would like to continue with some measure of red light cameras.
well, but you clarified it that canceling this contract now eliminates the debt. It's not negotiable.
It doesn't eliminate the debt. Canceling the contract now essentially eliminates the debt after June 30th of 2016 because there's a 12-month collection period that they continue to receive those citation receipts for 12 months following the termination of the contract. What I'm suggesting is that if a majority of the council wants to continue with red light cameras in some capacity, that you direct the staff to negotiate with Redflex now to terminate this contract and enter into a new contract effective July 1 that's more favorable to the city.
It's a catch-22. I'm for eliminating this contract as it exists, but I wanted to be able to negotiate where the police chief thinks that we need him, but that motion doesn't allow this, so let's just vote on the motion.
Madam Mayor, I'd call for the question.
You can make a substitute motion.
I'm asking that we call for the question and vote on the motion that I've presented.
The motion's by Mr. McEachran and seconded by Mr. Negretti to terminate the contract as of June 30th. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Opposed? Mr. Kennedy? Cox?
I voted aye.
I'm sorry, I couldn't tell who voted yes. Mayor Garcia?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So the motion carries with Mr. Kennedy voting no.
Mr. City Attorney, can I request for some direction to staff on
Absolutely.
what,
The item's still before the council right now, and you can seek direction from the council as to...
if there's any
their
desire to continue with red light cameras after July 1st?
My preference would be for you and the chief to sit down and look at where you think they are effective and are a good idea, and come back with that recommendation if you have it.
No.
Make a motion?
You could make that motion if you wanted to direct staff to bring that back.
I don't think he does need to make that motion. If he wants to bring
He
it
can
back,
direct it
he
too.
has the prerogative.
Right.
That was my point.
Well, but
any council member can bring anything back, and so I'm not going to take that away from you. If I wanted to bring back having Sam tell this council how he's going to address those particular intersections that are the most problematic, with putting deputies on bikes and pulling people over. I mean, if that's what's going to come back in the form of a red light camera, I want the same information with respect to having deputies on the streets. I mean, the council has a decision to make policy-wise whether or not we want to spend the money on officers, deputies on the street, or cameras. That's really what this comes down to. I don't believe that there was any direction given to staff that you go back and look at this again.
No, there wasn't, and that was my point. Was there was discussion regarding that, having direction to do that from a majority of the council gives us more leeway with regard to how much staff time we put into this. Any request from a single member of the council.
I am not going to ask them to do that if nobody else on this council wants to even consider it.
That's why I was
It's a waste of
requesting
everybody's time.
some direction on whether or not there's a majority that even would like us to look at that. Because if there's not, we're not going to do a whole lot of work for Mr. Kennedy.
But no, the votes on the council are not here. That's why I said I wanted to hear from the police chief, but we're not going to hear from him. No safety issue. He'll have to bring it back on his own volition at some other time, not because a council member recommended it. Brad.
Okay, so then that's settled. Now we move on to D8, Mortgage Assistance Program, case number 09-01-05, ESCOTO. Request the Victorville Housing Trust Board of Directors ratify the recording of a substitution of trustee and deed of reconveyance for map case number 09-01-05 ESCOTO.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Cox, second by Mr. McEachran. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries unanimously.
Now we have item D9, Mortgage Assistance Program case number 08-08-06, PADGETE. Request the Victorville Housing Trust Board of Directors ratify the recording of a substitution of trustee and deed of reconveyance for map case number 08-08-06, PADGETE.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McEachran, second by Mr. Kennedy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries unanimously.
Now we move to public comments. City manager and public comment, city manager and city council reports.
Okay. Do you have any cards at all, Mayor Garcia, for public?
I have
just
cards.
Public comments?
I have cards. The first card that I have is Wade Piper.
Good evening, and thank you for letting me address the council tonight. Basically, I'm here, I read over the weekend an article that stated that we've been given a 40% possible increase for our medical insurance. And I just wanted, you know, I realize the council, the city staff doesn't have any say, a lot of say in what they propose. There's negotiation. My thought is possibly we can explore other issues. Right now, we're currently self-insured, I believe, and maybe it's time we get out of the insurance business and look at some other options that might save the city as a whole and the employees, which I'm concerned about, possibility, you know, of cost savings. A couple ideas, and you know, I'm definitely not an expert, but maybe we can piggyback with the County of San Bernardino. I'm not sure what exactly they have going, but maybe that's a possibility. PERS, they have an insurance group. As a water employee with Victor Valley Water, we were part of the PERS insurance group. And when I became part of the city, I did notice as a Kaiser person that the costs actually, my costs seemed to go up a little bit, but my coverage went down. They have similar numbers, costs for the employee, but their policies might have more options for the employee. And in the last couple of years, I've talked with people of the city of Hesperia. I have friends that work in water and that, and they, through the PERS group and possibly the county and who knows who else, they actually have more choices than just two insurance carriers. Some of those choices actually, they may not be as good of a policy, but they were considerably lower for fellow employees that have children and a wife, a single city employee. What the city provides is probably more than adequate, but as you start having families with children, it doesn't come close to covering it, and there's a lot of out-of-pocket expense. So I realize, again, you guys, you're giving a number from a company. There's a negotiation. You guys try to do the best, as staff to, get the best bang for the buck, but there's other options out there, and I just hopeful that possibly
You have 30 seconds.
The staff and the council will consider other options. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you. East Neal?
I want to go back to the red light traffic comment you made, Mr. Kennedy. You said, and if you watch the video, I think it'll, maybe you misstated yourself, but you said that you really didn't care how big the fines were because you don't run red lights. And then previously, before that, you said everyone has chased yellow lights and everyone's ran a red light. So it kind of seemed contradictory of your previous statement. It's said that people are the most honest when in the face of death. In the case of death row inmates facing the death penalty, many are said to plead their innocence until their dying last breath. But many have chose to leave earth on a stranger note. Mr. French left with French fried. Mr. Apple left with baked apple. City Council, what is going to be your death statement when facing God and judgment? Mine hopefully be forgive me for my sins. This is Interim Foster Care Agency. This is Suki Singh's house. She runs the foster care for San Bernardino County, LA County. And if you go to the LA Times, it's affected here in Victorville. As a matter of fact, I helped those kids set up that site. It's called San Bernardino County 8. These were 8, Mr. Cox and Mayor, these were 8 children that resided in the city of Victorville and were homeless in foster care. That is, the red lights are going off. The red lights are way, way off. So I've hooked up with this attorney, L. Wallace Pate, and I heard her speak in the 90s. And she's an amazing woman. She's put more legislation. She's the one handling this law. So she says, E.T., she said, find me where the foster children go that are sexually abused. So I call Captain Dykes, and I call the health department, Dr. Rowe, and I call all these different agencies that I know because I'm an activist at the county level. Took me 7 days to find out. Then I started doing some more investigation because I do political investigative reporting.
You have 30 seconds.
And I find out we have a thing called SART, Sexual Abuse Referral Team. The trouble is they're not proactive and they only take babies to 5 years old. Please, let's do something. Let's get an oversight committee with the children, what's happening in foster care and the abuse that these kids are going through. Please, let's get an oversight committee because a lot of it's coming from here. Thank you and God bless and have a great day.
Thank you. Maggie Lowe?
And good evening. A most special thank you to Mr. Negretti and Mr. McCachran. We're on the same page. I like that. Of course I'm going to like that. But let me address you, Mr. Kennedy, if you don't mind, sir. You made a comment earlier about you don't worry about red light cameras because you never run a red light. Well, I didn't bore you folks with the details of how that red light camera got blown that night by me. It was a rainy night, 11 o'clock. I'm getting home from work to find my toilet and my bathtub are backed up. My daughter didn't call me at work and said, okay, we got to get in the car and go to Walmart. Coming over the Bear Valley overpass, I had to make a judgment call, and it was this. The roads are a little bit damp, and that's when they're most dangerous. Do I want to, there's nobody, it's midnight now, there's nobody at the cross. Do I want to run the risk of sliding and possibly injuring my daughter and myself in my vehicle, or maybe somebody else, or do I want to blow that? I'm going to tell you straight out, I blew it, and I would do the same thing again under the same circumstance. It was an emergency. It was a judgment call on my part. So I don't know how many years you've been driving, but I guarantee you, you continue to drive long enough, and I would challenge each and every one of you, or I would ask, not challenge. I can't go anywhere in the city of Victorville, nowhere, without going on Bear Valley. And that's a nightmare. I have to time when I go to Walmart. I have to time when I go to the grocery store. I have to time if I'm going to Hesperia Road because I don't want to get caught up in that nightmare. But I will say this about the red light camera. If you're going southbound on the 15, exiting at Bear Valley, and you want to go west, I can't figure out why the light in front of me is green, when right around the corner at the next light at Amethyst, at Amargosa, it's red. There's your gridlock. If you want to prevent gridlock, all those lights got to be green all the way down in that couple blocks right there. Otherwise, you're going to have gridlock, whether you have that red light camera or not. So there's a lot more I could say, but I'll close with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are all the cards that I have. From our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor Garcia. Just a couple of quick announcements. This Thursday, I'll be teaching the Leadership Victor Valley class for the Chamber on budget building blocks. It's more exciting than it may sound. If any of you want to come and see that. And then also this Thursday at 2:30, Fitness in the Park ribbon cutting at Doris Davies Park for some new fitness equipment. Hopefully we'll see you all out there for that. And then a little bit of lead advance here. April 11th is our next community cleanup, where we'll have probably 700 or 800 or more volunteers helping clean up the vacant properties in the city, and invite you all to come out for that. But now's the time for businesses and community groups to sign up to be a part of that, and fill out the forms, get your free T-shirts, and come out and help clean up the city. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any of the council members? John McGrady, did you want to mention our beautiful lunch we had today?
Oh, thank you. I was actually looking forward to talking about that today. Councilmember Kennedy, Mayor Garcia, and I were fortunate enough to be the prize for a March of Dimes raffle that recently occurred. And we met today for lunch with 3 wonderful folks up here in the high desert, and really gave us an opportunity to talk to folks in the community, hear their concerns, talk about things we've done, things we plan on doing, and then share a little bit about ourselves. And I really did enjoy hearing about Mr. Kennedy and Mayor Garcia and just the folks we were with, because you don't get oftentimes with our busy schedules a chance for us all to get together for such a worthy cause. So any of those type events that come up in the future, I definitely plan to attend.
Thank you.
You know, just to add to that, Eric, one of the things that came out of that conversation that I thought was interesting was the perception that Victor Valley Community Hospital isn't the same level or the same quality as a couple of our other hospitals in the area. And it's just not true. It's just an excellent, excellent hospital. And I think that came across. Didn't you think, Laura?
It is. True.
And I'd just like to add, you know, it's frustrating. I wish we had some of the college classes and even high school government classes here tonight. I have tremendous respect for my peers up here on the dais. I think what happened tonight was exactly what ought to happen in government. It's great policy discussion. It comes down to a policy decision. But we're all elected to be up here to have these types of discussions. And so often a lot of the decisions that we make are just, you know, here we go, and we're authorizing staff to move forward. But this is one that's been ongoing since 2008. I think has had a lot of comments in the public, a lot of comments by members of the council, both current and previous. And I just think it's important that this council have the opportunity to have those type of discussions. And regardless of whether or not we disagree, I respect everybody's opinion up here, and at the end of the day, we made a decision, and it's for the best of this council. So I'm just glad to see this happen. I just wish that we would have, you know, government classes from high school here. I know I took government in high school in my senior year, and I wish that there was some of the college government classes here to see this too, because these type of policy discussions don't happen often at a local level, but when they do, they are very important.
Thank you. And I do want to thank the council members. I think we all acted very professionally, and even though we don't always agree, but we discuss things and we always come to a decision, and we do the best we can. I don't believe we have anything else, so the meeting is adjourned.